Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 22nd of May, comes to you from London. Quite a mixed picture on the screen this morning, a bit of red and green, but looking at the energy mix, seeing further falls there. TTF below 30 euros for the first time since June 2021, so nearly 2-year lows there. And we'll take a look at the energy mix and the downside targets at the end of this session. We start by looking at the currencies, then we'll look at global stock indices, some soft commodities, gold, bond yields, and then the energy mix at the end. And so looking at the dollar index, remembering this is my weekly, my daily, and my 60-minute chart, my long-term, medium-term, and short-term view of the market with the corresponding point and figure targets. It gives us a multifaceted view of any instrument. I'm running here on Refinitiv Icon, but of course you can be running Updata on Bloomberg, Tradeport, over 30 different data services. So you just plug it in and play with whatever you've got, and just gives you an extra level of analysis on top of your existing screen. So looking at the dollar index, we see here we are bullish above the clouds still, but bearish below on the daily chart. And on the 60-minute chart, we have had a bit of a resurgence here in the dollar index, just over that 104 at the end of last week, but just starting to fall back a little bit and hitting some potential resistance there on the medium term chart. We have activated the big downside target there to 82, some 20% below where we are, but the reality is until that lagging line crosses through the 100 level, we're probably okay in terms of the dollar just holding the long-term bull trend. That's not what you're really hearing a lot about at the moment, but the long-term trend will of course turn last. Looking at the euro, we're seeing the euro just hitting some resistance on the weekly chart, on the Ichimoku chart here, euro dollar, and we're seeing here on the medium term chart we are finding some cloud support. So we've got two trends really fighting each other. The longer term trend normally wins, but all trends come to an end eventually, otherwise everything would just go one way. Looking at sterling, we're sitting at 124.55, looking stronger here, crossing through the cloud as well, but not yet on the lagging line. That 125 level we have played with, so quite key there. And looking at the shorter term chart, we are just falling away a little bit with some downside targets, and there's a shortage of longer term upside targets, so that's quite key. There is one to 130, but nothing on the very long term 1% chart. Against the euro, sterling is holding the 115 level this morning, so that's looking better. Medium term, sterling is appreciating against the euro. And looking here on the 60-minute chart, we are just heading slightly higher. And of course, we've got a cloud to fight here as well. Bitcoin sitting at 26,800, really struggling now. It's back below that $30,000 mark. We do have upside targets and a downside target. Both are activated. So we've got a tussle either way. We've got targets back into the low 20s. And if you're trading Bitcoin, keep an eye on the 60-minute chart or the 1-minute chart. That's really what you need to be doing for those targets. Looking at the futures markets this morning, we've got the S&P future above 4,200. That 4,200 level, pretty critical. Not quite broken yet on the S&P 500 cash index, but we are just now starting to get through there, and signs that we will break 4,200, which would be bullish for the market. And the Nasdaq looking very strong. Of course, a lot of the Nasdaq is about the majors: Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Tesla, Amazon, Google. Those stocks all looking pretty strong still, and that's why we're seeing stronger upside targets on the tech indice rather than on the S&P 500 generally. The breadth of the market is about as bad as it's ever been. It's all concentrated in a handful of stocks. In fact, Apple is bigger than the whole of the UK market now in market cap. So really quite insightful there. And we're looking at the FTSE here. This is the FTSE future, just struggling, having hit that 8,000 level and making a lower high, and just falling away here. So really just struggling to hold those new highs. The DAX in Germany down very slightly this morning, but is looking strong above the cloud on all three time frames. So that's looking certainly better. And Japan has had a really strong rise here. We're sort of seeing 20-year highs in Japan, so really significant, really back to levels we've seen in the 1990s. So really running, targets been met. We've got good upside targets. We've been flagging Japan as one of the best looking markets this year. Looking at the Hang Seng, we're up 1% there as well. Not a very different looking chart, of course, from Tokyo. And if we look at this Chinese market, also just struggling to break higher there. The Indian market up 0.4%. The Sensex still looking like one of the better markets this year, breaking higher, so that's quite key as well. So looking strong there. And the Aussie market was down nearly 0.25% overnight, so not looking as good. We'll look at the energy mix in a minute. Just looking at some of the soft commodities, we've got wheat sitting just below $600, so it is falling lower and starting to make new lows. So it's really seeing soft commodities coming off. The same is true of corn, so that's falling away as well. Sugar was one that we saw really strong performance in recently, and that is really bucking the trend, although short term it has pulled back there. Keep an eye on the targets. Gold is back below the 2,000 level, so that's really significant. We are still in bull trends on the weekly and the daily chart, but the 60-minute chart, we've got to get back above that 2,000 level really to be back into a short-term bull trend. Just a shortage of clear targets there, making gold quite a hard call at the moment. Of course, we hold that 2,000 level for longer. 2,075.50 is the all-time high. That's the level we really need to break. Silver back below $24. Not looking as strong there as either, but still looking better on those weekly and daily charts. And we have crossed back above the cloud, and we've got some short-term upside targets. So a better week in store for silver. Copper, interesting. We've seen these sanctions for Russia. Not really done much on the price there, so that's quite interesting that we still are long-term and medium-term bearish on copper. So even though we've seen sanctions on copper from Russia, not really making a difference. Last week's big move was in the US 10-year yield, and we did see moves back above 160, and that did deactivate downside targets. I talked about that on LinkedIn. So we are seeing 10-year yields coming back and looking stronger again, and we're still bearish on the medium term, but that long-term chart holds bullish. We've still got upside targets. The tussle on that medium term 0.5% chart we're seeing just pushing higher there as well. Apple, really the star of the show and the one to watch. We've got a strong upside target there, and Apple's not that far away from making new all-time highs, so you really just cannot ignore that. Looking at the weekly, so the energy mix now, we've got Brent crude to start with. Here's the daily and the 60-minute chart. We're bearish on both charts here. We were bearish out to clients this morning in our morning call report. Downside targets on the daily, the 60-minute and the 1 minute. It was a really very easy call. We are actually flat at the moment, and looking at WTI, similar picture, having just come off the bottom, that 70 level quite critical there. US Nat Gas, we were neutral because we had targets in both directions, and as it happens, the shorter term downside targets now kicking in, so we are just pulling back, and of course we've got a lot of work still to do on the long term chart to get through there. Just look at some of the other energy items. Coal sitting at 110, bearish below the cloud on the daily and on the 60-minute chart. Downside targets still below 100 there, 99, 80 and 83. So we do see coal prices potentially falling a lot lower still. Emissions just got to that 90 level last week, broke to 91, but just struggled to hold it. A triangle failure really, and we're back into the high 80s. We've got downside targets this morning, so really quite a hard call. We did go neutral because we were above the cloud on the 60-minute, but the downside targets were holding us from calling it higher. We do have an upside target not yet activated, back to about 100 euros. We've got work to do to get there. We really are in the 8,500 range now on emissions. Looking at TTF, this is the big story this morning, below 30. I put a poll out on LinkedIn, already had hundreds of votes as to where the bottom is. We do have targets quite a bit lower. The secret is really on your TTF chart is just to open the chart, hit the T key, and then just play with the box sizes. So here we see we've got targets to 23, 21. If we go to a bigger box size, 1850, 1350. So that gives you some idea. You need to look at all the targets really. NBP, we see here we're at 65 pence per therm, and really just touching that 65 level. Again, downside targets lower. No big surprises following TTF there. And last of all, a look at German power. Breaking lower below that 135 level. We were bearish this morning to clients. We had all these downside targets into the 120s. You really cannot ignore them. High 120s is where we're going next. 128, 128, 129. 3 targets, multiple targets. That's where we're headed. That's it for today. Until next time, happy charting. See you then.